Welcome to Hood Boy Stories. In this episode, I'll be discussing the First Street East Coast Crips. Throughout the 1920s and the 1930s, the Flats, which was bounded by the Los Angeles River to the west and Boyle Heights to the east, was one of the city's worst slums. The mostly Mexican and Russian immigrant inhabitants of the Flats lived in low-rise detached housing, consisting of 1 and 2 room units with common walkways and shared bathroom facilities in the house courts. A bubonic plague started in the Flats in 1924 that killed 25 people. And for years, rats with bubonic germs had infested the area. A survey conducted by the city in 1937 deemed 20% of the city's dwellings as unfit for human habitation, which included most of the Flats. In 1942, housing officials raised the Flats and built the Aliso Village housing projects in their place. Pico Aliso were the name of the 2 housing projects that were built in that area. Aliso Village and Pico Gardens were the largest group of public housing projects west of the Mississippi River at that time. Aliso Village was part of an effort to provide war workers with clean, attractive, and helpful homes. The Great Depression, followed by World War II, had created a severe housing crisis. More people had migrated to California to work in the war plants. Aliso Village was among the first racially integrated housing projects in the country. The 34-building village housed almost 900 families, representing one of the most massive redevelopment schemes in the history of the city. By the 1950s, the perception of public housing had drastically changed. In the decades that followed, federal support for public projects declined even further. As many white families moved to the suburbs, families of color were often left in areas of economic abandonment and were unable to move because of policies such as redlining. This state of despair, in turn, was often used to justify the further defunding of public housing. In Aliso Village, the drug trade and gang activity grew as an economic response to the lack of public investment. The Premier Flats, Capones, and Cuatro Flats were the major gangs in the area at the time. In the 70s, the Aliso Village Brims formed in the projects. They were one of, if not the first black gang to form in East LA. In the late 70s, a few guys from the Harlem Crips came down to the projects and started the Eastside Roll and First Street. Eastside Roll and First Street started because they used to have to fight Eastside 3rd Street while they were on their way to Holland Bay Junior High School. In 1979, a few First Streeters started hanging out in Six Deuce territory. It was there on 61st Street that they took on the East Coast Crip identity. At first, First Street went to war with the Brims. And by 1984, the Brims faded away. That same year, the TMC gang was formed, which started off as a breakdancing crew. TMC was often called the Mexican Crips before they turned into the mob crew. An affiliate of First Street allegedly co-founded the TMC gang. First Street and TMC coexisted well at first. They had a fallout when a reputable member of First Street known as New York got into a territory dispute and shot a member of the TMC gang. The TMC gang responded by killing New York as retaliation. The Cuatro Flats, who were located in the Pico Gardens projects, used to be on good terms with First Street as well. But over a 2-3 year period in the mid-80s, they periodically clashed with First Street. The war started because First Street allegedly gunned a Cuatro Flat down in broad day. In 1987, First Street and the Premier Flats kicked off their war, allegedly over the disrespect of a female Capone and First Street affiliate. The Premier Flats then turned around and allegedly killed 2 First Street members. Retaliation shootings from First Street occurred allegedly every other night. By 1989, the First Street East Coast Crips allegedly ran the Premier Flats out the projects. From at least the late 80s to the early 90s, the First Street East Coast Crips dominated the projects, taking full control of the cocaine trade. They had all the money, cars, and firepower. All this while being the only black gang in East LA, which is a predominantly Hispanic area. On February 12, 1989, shortly after midnight, 20-year-old Andrea was outside talking with some friends in the projects when between 3 and 6 men approached. Without warning, 2 of the men, believed to be Latino gang members, opened fire from about 100 feet away. The Latino men yelled out their gang name as they ran off. Witnesses said that one of the guns used appeared to be an AR-15. One of the men that was wounded in the attack was identified as Edward Frederick. He was grazed by shotgun pellets in the head, leg, behind, and hand. He only required minor medical treatment. Another shooting victim, Raymond, was shot in the back. He was in serious but stable condition at the County USC Medical Center. Authorities say his wounds may have left him paralyzed. Andrea and her 8-month-old unborn child died from the shooting. She was the niece of Mike Garrett, who was a former USC football star who played with the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Diego Chargers. She was shot once in the side and died at the scene. Lydia said she was inside her apartment when she heard the gunshots and people screaming. One bullet pierced the kitchen window and lodged into her closet. Lydia then looked outside and saw Andrea lying on the grass and ran to her. Lydia said that earlier that evening, Andrea had asked Lydia and her sister-in-law if they wanted to go to a nightclub. They declined. Also during this time, the First Street East Coast Crips began robbing the East LA Dukes for fun. This friction caused a war between the two gangs. Beginning in the early 90s, the Los Angeles Housing Authority and city officials began to push the First Street Crips out of the projects through evictions. They then set up a no trespassing rule, which prohibited First Street members from going back and hanging out in the projects. If they went back, they would be arrested on site and have their car towed. The First Street members began to scatter into different parts of LA, such as the 30s, 40s, and the Six Pack. In 1999, the city of Los Angeles demolished the Aliso Village housing projects. They were converted into luxury condos in an early effort by the city to gentrify the Boyle Heights neighborhood. In recent time, the First Street East Coast Crips have officially set up shop in the Kansas Hill area of Pacoima, which is located in the San Fernando Valley of Los Angeles County. Their new territory is next to the Whiteman Airport, and their main block is Glayman Street, which is located up the hill. They are on friendly terms with the rest of the East Coast umbrella. They beef it with Pacoima Pyro, Legendary Gangsta Bloods, and several other Latino gangs in the area. They also beef with the Hoovers and the Swans. I'd like to thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe.